Hey there, rock and roll podcast fans. This is Mike Hoban. Welcome to Rat Tales, the podcast that brings you the music and stories of the Boston rock scene that grew out of the mid-'70s at the Rat and some of the other hellhole joints, each with their own sick charm.
I was walking and singing and listening to those bells ring.
That was Walking and Singing from Ill Wind from the Flashes LP that features our guest today, Dave Kinsman on drums. Thanks for being here on the Boston Beat, Dave. When did you first start playing drums?
I started probably early on in high school. My father had been a drummer, and my cousin had been a drummer. So there were drums around, and I just started bashing away at them. And then I finally figured out that I could play along with the radio. So that's how I really started.
So eventually you started your first band?
Well, I was in the high school band, in the marching band, and then I met a guy who had an electric guitar, which was unusual at that time. And we started getting together, and then we realized we needed more people, and we gradually pulled in people from, mostly from my high school, and we formed a high school band, and probably in our junior year. And that's when we really started playing.
Your first band was called The Echoes?
The Echoes. Yeah, one of the many Echoes.
Did the Echoes do any gigs?
Well, the Echoes, at that time there were a number of places to play, CYO dances, and there was the CCC dance, which was down in Wakefield. I grew up in Stoneham, and so we actually had places to play. And then we went on to be in the Mass State Battle of the Bands. We went through a number of contests and went to the finals, and then after high school we all we still played because we were all in the area, even though some of us were in school. And then we actually as we got older, we could play in a couple clubs, and we played some frat parties.
How long was that band together?
Well, let's see, we probably started in '64, probably about the same time we first saw the Beatles on TV. Everybody wanted to have a band then. And
was seeing the Beatles on TV what really started your interest in music?
Well, it certainly kicked us into high gear because it started us singing. We were playing mostly like Venture and Bill Black combo stuff, and then we had to start singing once the Beatles came along.
And, changed everything.
Changed everything for everybody. So probably up until I joined Ill Wind, I was playing in the band.
How did Ill Wind form?
Ill Wind formed basically at MIT. Three of the members were students at MIT, and two of them were from the West Coast, and so they had the West Coast influence. And so they, Ken Frankel, who was the lead guitarist, had been a folk and bluegrass musician on the West Coast. He'd actually been in a band with Jerry Garcia back then when he was out there, and so he formed the band with Kerry Mann, who was also at MIT, and Richard Griggs, another MIT student. And they played around. Their first band was called the Blues Crew, and then they changed the name to the Prophets. And that Stu Schulman was in that band, who used to play. He played with John Edwards, and he's a very, very good bass player. And then they brought in Judy Bradbury as the lead singer, and they had a drummer, and he left, and they were looking for a drummer. And they had put up signs in the music stores in Boston. And a friend of mine who used to be in a band called the J. Barron Four saw it, and he said, well, you should call these guys. So I went in to get the number, and it's at Wurlitzer's, and Harry Sandler was working there, I remember. And so I called them, and I auditioned for the band, and I could obviously count to four, I guess, so they hired me. But I was a kid. I was a couple of years younger than all of those guys. I was just out of high school, and they were well into college. So
who was in the original lineup?
It was Judy, it was me, it was Ken Frankel, Kerry Mann, and Richard Griggs.
Is having a female vocalist unique for the time?
It was different. There weren't that. I was trying to think if there were any bands at that point that had female lead vocalists, and I don't think so in the Boston area anyway, the local bands.
Right.
And it was different for me to be doing, and they were writing a lot of their own material, and that was very different because obviously we'd been doing covers and didn't write anything in our high school band, and so it was kind of a folk rock oriented sound, and quite the arrangements were fairly complicated for the times, I thought, and so it was all new to me.
What year did you join the band?
That would have been probably, I want to say, late '66.
So the band had several very diverse influences.
Yeah, because Ken's lead guitar playing was primarily came out of bluegrass, and he was trying to adapt to rock and roll, and but you could tell that was where the influence was. Judy was a folk musician. Carrie, kind of mixed bag. He was a very good musician. He was a bass player. He could play piano and he could play just about anything. And Richard came from a rock background, and I came from a rock background.
So having the various influences gave the band its unique sound.
I think so, yeah.
How long after you joined did the band start playing live?
Well, we started playing at MIT fraternity parties because they knew everybody. They knew people on campus, and we played a couple little mini concerts at Kraisley Auditorium there, and we were looking. We played. We got into the Rathskeller, and we played that there. But I had contacts from my high school days with the CYO dances, so I got us into I got us a gig at our CYO dance. And we were probably the most different band that had been there, with because these guys already had the long hair, and I was trying to grow mine out, but it was and we went over very well at the CYO dance, and through that we were able to get more CYO dances around the Boston area, and so that kind of got us started.
Did you play many clubs at the time?
Well, we didn't do too many clubs. I think the Rat was the only. I'm just trying to think. I think that was the only club we played. No, I take that back. There was the one up on Commonwealth Ave, the bend, right at the bend there, and I can't think what it was. A lot of rock bands used to play there.
What was the first Ill Wind show?
Oh, well, it was probably a frat party at MIT because that would be easy for for us to get in there.
Did you get paid for these gigs?
Well, see, I'd been playing our high school band. Actually, we made money, and we played around our little North Shore area, but we also played down the Cape. So we'd done some gigs, and so we were used to getting some money. Not a lot, but but playing, but having people appreciate you for playing your own material was different for me, because we had to arrange these things. We'd have words, we'd have music, we had to put them all together and arrange them. We couldn't listen to a record and say, okay, this is how it's done. So that was very different, and have people like it, and that was very.
What was the initial response to the band playing live?
A lot of people liked it. Some people, they kept asking for, Midnight Hour or something. Yeah, that was before Freebird, I think. But anyway, you get the picture. But no, I think as our name started to get around, people would come to see us because we were different, and we finally got a booking agent to work with us, and that's where we started working outside of Boston at colleges, and that was a big deal for us, and that's how we were able to kind of approach, I guess we did approach, or we were approached by Capitol Records. Anyway, and that's when things started to click.
Then the band got into some Capitol Records.
I think actually the Capitol connection may have come through the guy Dick, I can't remember his last name, who was managing The Lost. He and our manager were friends, and they were, I think they were being produced by Dick Weissman, who was a Capitol record producer. He had been with the Journeymen, with John Phillips and Scott McKenzie, and so we went down and we worked with him, and basically it was independent, and we were hoping that Capitol would sign us after and we did 5 cuts that we thought came out pretty well, and Capitol wanted to see us, so we went out to the West Coast so they could see us out there.
You recorded demos for them?
Yeah, we had acetates, and I'm not sure who actually paid for those. It was Capitol that put up the money or what, but anyway, they were made, and we went out there and played. We did a small tour up and down the West Coast. And
how did that go?
it went very well. We played at the We started at the Cheetah Club in Venice. We were there for a week. Saw some really interesting bands coming in and out of there. This was summer of '67. So we went up to San Francisco and played California Hall. We played the Matrix, and then we went out on our nights off to see the local bands, the Grateful Dead, and of course Kenny knew them. So and then Big Brother. We saw Country Joe, and we did a concert out there with the Youngbloods and a couple other bands. I can't remember who they were, but it was a good time for us to be out there.
Where were the Capitol demos recorded?
The Capitol cuts were recorded at Capitol Studio A in New York, and then we had recorded some things with Terry Hanley out in Medford.
Was Dick Weissman the producer of just the Capitol demos?
It wasn't an album. There were 5 cuts we did for Capitol, and he produced those 5. And I think that there's some of more time was spent on those 5 cuts than on the whole album.
Here's It's Your Life.
When you look at the sun and you watch it rise, and you watch it set right before your eyes, you gotta make some dough, then you spend it again. When there's no more left on, that's where you begin. It's your life, you gotta make it now, take it as you can.
That was It's Your Life from Ill Wind, another one of the Capitol demos recorded in 1967.
We got back, and Capitol decided not to sign us. I guess that was, the Mamas and Papas were out. The Peanut Butter Conspiracy was out. They felt that there were Spanky and Our Gang were out. There were enough female singers, bands out there at that time, so they passed. Right. We were. I think our manager went down with some demos and shopped our music to different labels, and Tom Wilson was very interested in producing us. So we signed on with ABC and Tom Wilson to produce an album.
When did the Flashes LP come out, and what was the reaction?
That came out in '68. I don't remember exactly when in '68, but it did come out in '68. Reaction was good. It was doing well in like 3 cities. We heard back. The problem was that the first pressing had a skip in one of the tunes, and in hindsight, we probably should have said, "Leave it," But we, being artists, we said, "You got to pull them back," and they did. But the publicity kept on going, and no album. So it was it was a live and learn.
The original singer left the band, and then Connie joined.
She left long before that. Yeah, I mean, I was only in the band for probably 4 or 5 months before she left. So Connie Devaney came on board. She had been a singer on the Jersey Shore. She had done a lot of club singing down there, and she had moved to Boston after she was married. Her husband was a assistant professor at MIT. So there was another MIT connection there. When we cut the album, we did that at Mayfair in New York.
What was the process like recording the album with Tom Dowd as a producer? What was he like to work with?
Well, he took over. I mean, he was basically he had the name, and he had signed several acts. Among them was Fraternity of Man, Harumi, who was a Japanese artist, and I can't think of the other bands, but there were several of us, and so he wasn't going to spend a lot of time on each individual album. And we were expecting the same. I think we were expecting the same kind of process that we went through with Dick Weissman, who was very meticulous, and it wasn't that way. And I think we got shut out of the mixing process, which really kind of ticked us off. And we were not going to re-up our contract with him, and somehow he found out that it was coming up, so he renewed the contract. He picked up the option. That contributed to the band breaking up, because they didn't, we did not want to work with him again, but we were actually contractually obligated to work with him again. Well, he wanted to wring whatever he could out of our career, and I mean, he could do it, so he did it. So why not? Didn't cost him anything. But anyway, so but the recording sessions, they went pretty well. I mean, we did some of the things. We did what we wanted to do. We, changed some of the arrangements. We, he worked with us on some. I remember we had to bring in an organ, and we had to do some modulation changes. And so some work was done on the album, and all in all, it came out pretty well. The mix was not as good as we wanted. Actually, the album was mixed by Gary Kellgren at the record plant. It was one of the first albums to ever be mixed at the record plant in Los Angeles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did Thomas specifically pick the songs that were going to be on the album?
I don't remember. I think he picked the order of the songs. I think that was another thing. We would have picked a different order of songs, and he picked them. And the album cover, the photo on the back didn't come out right, which is interesting because they said it couldn't be done, and yet Sunbeam Records on the album, on the vinyl album, and on the CD, they did what we wanted to do.
Wow. Well, maybe it took all those years.
Yeah, it was before Photoshop. Before Photoshop.
Right, exactly.
There was a single. It was My Dark World. That was the A side, and I don't remember what the B side was. I have a copy of it, but it's been a few years since I looked at it. But it might have been Little Man. I'm not sure. But it actually received some airplay. It never bubbled into the top 100. But we did get some feedback that it was getting play. I don't have any stats or anything, but it did. And there was some talk about someone very interested in doing that song, covering that song, but that never happened either.
Here's My Dark World.
In my dark world, I walk alone in thought. My path is covered with memories I have fought. I am filled with a pain that I have bled. Illusions all that's left inside my head. The boy that's leaving me and the one that's yet to come.
That was My Dark World from the Flashes LP, recorded in 1968. Did the single get much airplay?
It was kind of like the pick of the week. It would break out in like Des Moines or the here and there, and I remember reading a book about a band like that, and how it could never get everything together at the same time, and unless you get everything together at the same time, it's like the stars aligning. It just didn't.
That was similar to what Teddy of Teddy and the Pandas said about his experiences, as far as labels not being able to distribute their records properly back then.
Yeah, and that's where you need everybody work. You need those all the people working for you, to kind of make
Get it all together.
Get it all together. I think the people playing the Rat were, like there was an early Boston band called the Talisman. They had been there, and I think the Lost were playing there, and we played there. It was a place that you kind of had to play, and if you wanted to be, part of the, in the scene in Boston. So, our agent at the time said, you got to play the Rat. So we went in and played.
So the Rat, I think they opened in '69, right? Would that be about?
Oh no, it was earlier than '69. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure they were open way earlier than that. Yeah, because this would have been 60, if not 66, it was 67.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was early on.
It was earlier than '69, because that's what I had heard. I had read somewhere.
They may have. I don't know if they closed for a while and then reopened, but no, they were around. They were an institution for years.
Huh.
So yeah, there was some interesting times. But we did spend time, quite a bit of time in New York. We played the Bitter End, played the Cheetah Club down there. There was a funny story. I'll tell you a funny story about the Cheetah Club. We were there, the Vanilla Fudge was the main act, and there was another band. The Vanilla Fudge they were from Long Island, and they had another name. I don't know if it was the Hassle or the Rich Kids, but anyway, the other band, who was their main rival, they were also on the ticket, and we were the third band. So they came in, and the second band, whoever they were, set up on the stage, and then the Vanilla Fudge people came in and said, no, you got to move that stuff. They had to move, the roadies moved all the stuff, and so they got it all set up, and then the band themselves came in, and they looked at the setup and said, no. So everything had to get all moved around. In the meantime, we'll just set up wherever, wherever nobody else is, So we're playing along, we're playing our music, and I think that was, and of course we were playing our folk rock stuff, and the cheetah dancers were there, and they were going, tighten up, tighten up, tighten up. And we thought they were casting aspersions on our band. And what they wanted us to do Archie Bell and the Drells, the song Tighten Up.
Did you know that one?
We didn't know that one. That was not in, VCN wasn't playing it, so we weren't listening to it.
Wow.
Anyway. Well, when we found our, people in New York liked us. I mean, we played the bitter end, and there were some people who were there. I mean, most of the people who were at the Cheetah Club were there to hear the Vanilla Fudge, and but I think we did all right in New York. I'm trying to think if we played any place else in New York. I can't remember. But we used to be mostly for recording. We used to spend time there. We played out on Long Island, and we did well out there. That was right after we came back from California, and we got to this place in Long Island, and they had all these posters, and they had actually painted the side of the building direct from San Francisco.
Wow. That's awesome.
Because the bands from San Francisco hadn't come out to the East yet. The music was just starting to come out. We knew of the West Coast bands because Tom, our manager, and Ken, our lead guitarist, and Richard were from California, so they knew all these bands. So they had the albums, the early albums, the very first Grateful Dead album, the early Jefferson Airplane, the Seeds, some of these bands, Love, that nobody had ever heard of on the East Coast. We were listening to that stuff, and so it was. So that definitely influenced our sound, and that made us, I think, different from a lot of the other bands around.
When did the band get involved with the William Morris Agency?
They were our agent when we signed with ABC. They had set up a tour for us. They actually got some of our college dates in New England. But after the album didn't chart, and the tour was put on hold, and that kind of ended that. We still would get a booking from them from time to time in the colleges, but we never went on tour for them. But we did play for a couple of years after that, work in the college scene, and that worked out very well for us. We spent quite a bit of time in New York City. We played down there, we recorded down there, when we did the Capitol records and the ABC records. We used to stay at the Albert Hotel. And we stayed there because that's where the Lovin' Spoonful used to stay and practice in the basement. So we wanted to practice in the basement. And that's what we did. And that was a hole. But we wanted to practice there because if it worked for them, it was going to work for us. And so we met some interesting people there. The Lothar and the Hand people I think they were living there at the time.
Oh my God.
And I remember the Sopwith Camel were there when they were recording. And they had shared bathrooms, so you never knew who you were going to run into in the shared bathroom. I remember the Blues Magoos were there, the Mothers were there, on their first trip to the East. So it was an interesting time.
Then members started leaving?
Yeah, once the songwriters left, it was, there was no new material really, so.
So the band eventually split up?
Yeah, everybody kind of went off and did their thing. I traveled for a little while, and then Connie was involved in a booking agency she started, and then I had come back to Boston, and Connie and I started talking about maybe putting the band back together, and so we ended up doing that with Connie and Carrie, the original bass player, and Richard Griggs, and so we got the band back together, and we were looking for guitarists. We went through a number of guitarists. And Richard left, and we brought in Walter Bjorkman, who had been with the band Cloud and then Swallow. And he really changed the sound of the band. It really, at that point, because he was a blues guitarist, and Connie had a fabulous voice, and the two of them just worked so well together, and so we became more of a blues rock band, and so it was a very different sound for us. And we still played some colleges, and then we got into the ski club circuit, which worked pretty well for us, and we did that, and then concert clubs, and we did that through '73.
Who was doing most of the songwriting up to that point?
We did some songs from the original band, but we really had no songwriters. Richard wrote some songs, but he ended up leaving the band. So we did mostly traditional blues, some cover songs, but a lot of obscure songs that we liked. So it was fun in that respect to play songs that weren't getting played by every other band in town.
Was there talk of doing new recordings? Was there label interest?
We talked about it. We had people come to see us. I remember we did some recording at Intermediate Studios. Our road manager was an engineer there. The guy who was our road manager for the early Ill Wind, and we had some well-known people come to see us, but our stuff just wasn't. It just wasn't ready. It just wasn't commercial enough, or whatever, so it just never happened. We made some good music, but we have everything from club song, show tunes to blues songs to cover songs. So there was no direction. It was just making good music, and we had good musicians in the band, and good vocals, good harmonies, and we had a following. We still had our following from the early bands, so we could go into a concert club and know we were going to fill the place, and so it.
The band still did a good number of gigs, right?
Yeah, we were actually, even back in the early days, once we started playing, we were probably one of the few Boston bands that actually worked all the time. I mean, we were quite busy, and that's why a lot of people didn't know that we were from Boston. We didn't know what may not have known what we did in our spare time, but we were working.
The band still have a manager at this point?
We had a manager who was not as productive as he could be, but he was a West Coast guy, and I think there was a little friction between some of the East Coast business people and our manager sometimes, but we did have an agent in Boston who got us a lot of gigs, and then we also worked with an agent in New Hampshire who was tapped into the New Hampshire and Vermont scene, and so we were able to keep busy.
Did the band ever do any TV appearances? We
didn't. We did closest we did a soundtrack for a PBS show called 5 O'Clock World, and we did the who was it? Was it the Vogues? We did the Vogues 5 O'Clock World, and I'd love to have a recording of that. Nobody has a recording of that.
Ill Wind opened for a lot of different bands.
Yeah, when we were on the college circuit, we opened up for Jethro Tull. We opened up for the Byrds, Buckingham, James, the Who, Mitch Ryder, and then we also opened up for Van Morrison and Fleetwood Mac.
Did you get to know any of the members?
No, sometimes. I mean, they hadn't hit their super peak yet. But so yeah, no, a lot of them were very, very friendly. We opened up for Moby Grape one time, and so yeah, we met a lot of them. It was interesting. After the band broke up, we had one of our last gigs. We had opened up for Fleetwood Mac at the Boston Tea Party, and I was out traveling, and I was in San Francisco. I was at one of maybe the Avalon, and I'm standing there, and Mick Fleetwood comes up, and he remembers me from the Boston Tea Party. Fleetwood Mac, that was before the women joined the band, so they were a blues band, and no, they were very nice, and the Who, they were very, that was when the Who would do two shows, so we would come on, they'd come on, we'd come on, they'd come on, so we got to spend some time with them in the dressing rooms underneath in the bowels of the music hall.
What was it like playing with Chuck Berry?
We did play with Chuck Berry. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, Chuck at that time used to travel by himself, and so we were hired to play and also play behind him at a concert.
heard that.
That was really fun. But I remember, we're there, early, expecting we're going to have a little rehearsal, and the side door opens up, and this little guy comes in with a guitar, and he gets up on stage, and he plugs in and tunes his guitar, and he starts to walk away, and our bass player Kerry said, "Did you want to rehearse?" And Chuck turns around and goes, "Man, if you don't know these songs by now, you're never going to know them." We did. We knew the songs.
Had the band done any Chuck Berry songs in their set?
We may have done Johnny Be Good or something, but we never, we
knew the songs.
We knew from hearing them. Oh yeah, we grew up with them. So yeah, that was cool.
The band also played the free concerts in the Cambridge Commons?
The Cambridge Commons was a favorite of ours. If we were in town, we used to like to go in and play. I don't know how many times we played there, but a number of times. And that was always fun, because it was outdoors, and we'd see a lot of our friends there, and other musicians would come by, and it was a nice scene.
You also played the Hat Shell?
We played the Hat Shell one
you
time.
did?
Yeah. In fact, I was when I was looking for some photos to bring down here, I came across a write-up in the Boston Globe talking about how the Hat Shell was one of the biggest at that time. Had been one of the biggest concerts that they had, and they had to close down Storrow Drive, and they estimated the crowd was about 55,000 people.
Really?
Yeah. It was one of those nights. It was the first warm night of the spring, and it was it was like the perfect storm, and everybody just came out, and we were playing. We were playing with the New York Rock Ensemble, and it was a beautiful night, and but it got pretty crowded. You can't tell sometimes how many people are out there, except
Right.
when I looked out and I saw that there were people where there should have been cars. I knew that we were playing to a lot of people.
People standing in Star Drive.
Yeah.
There was a concert in Maine where the opening band actually played songs from your first LP.
That was where was it? That was at the York Beach Casino, I think. And they opened up for us, and we thought it was kind of strange because they were doing our songs. And they got to High Flying Bird, and that's the song with the skip in it. And they did the
They did it with the
they
skip.
did it with a skip. And so Connie went in to talk to them afterwards and said, that was a skip. It took us so long to learn that part. that was bizarre.
People still had copies with the skips in it?
Oh yeah, they were out. The first time I even heard the skip, because we got the album, and I rushed it down to, out to have different people play it. And we took it down to the tea party, and I remember, Don Law was listening to it, and he wanted to hear High Flying Bird. All of a sudden, we had the skip in it, and he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "I don't know."
Were you aware of the other Boston bands that were around at the time, like Beacon Street Union and Orpheus?
We were mostly friends with, some of the people from Orpheus and the Beacon Street Union. I'm trying to think who else we hung out with. Some of the other bands we hung out with at the time. But we were, because one of the bands one of the early bands that I remember listening to one of the bands that inspired me was Burying the Remains. They were, the first local real band I saw at our Stoneham CYO dance, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, we used to hang out with some of the other bands. So we had our own little group because we were a group, and then we had our friends from the group that were not musicians but friends of the group. But as far as the people we hung out with, Harry from Orpheus, Russ from Ultimate Spinach, who was a drummer. And
You met Chevy Chase from Chameleon Church?
yeah, that was when we rented a house in Wellesley, and as I said, these were old they were old dorms, and when Dana Hall School built their real dorms, there were these vacant houses. It was on a little circle, and they were too big for single-family houses, but they were perfect for rock and roll bands. And so we rented one, and Chameleon Church and some of the people from Ultimate Spinach were living in the house next door.
It's like a whole musical neighborhood.
It was something Wellesley had not experienced before.
Probably never did again.
No.
Was the band influenced by what was going on with the Boston sound?
We were, I think that some of that developed when we were away out in California. It was really Dick Summer who had his show. That was an AM show too, wasn't it, at that time? I think everything was AM at that time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And some of the MGM bands, like Ultimate Spinach, Beacon Street Union, Orpheus, and promoting the Boston sound, which I think was being fostered by being promoted by the record companies, trying to recreate what had happened in San Francisco. And because we were, between Capitol and then ABC, and so we weren't really part of that group. And again, our manager, I don't think did as much as he could have done to kind of promote us in that way. And maybe we didn't realize how the Boston sound was actually going to develop into a real movement. But as it turned out, everything kind of flopped anyway. So, but any band in Boston, I think, kind of got dragged down along with it. But we were, as I said, a lot of our time was spent outside of Boston, working these colleges, and so we didn't feel a part of what was going on. We played the Tea Party. I'm trying to think what other clubs we would have been playing in Boston at that time. We played concerts at Harvard and MIT, and that was probably pretty much it in Boston. So everything else was outside of Boston.
What ended up breaking up the band?
I think there was some misunderstandings. I'm not sure exactly what went on. At various times people got disenchanted with the fact that we weren't, moving forward. I mean, by moving forward, I mean getting record contracts, and that kind of thing. And there were personal reasons why he left, that I can't go into entirely, but he was, he wasn't getting along with the band as, he wasn't happy. And when you're not happy and you're spend so much time with people, it's hard to continue on. So he left. Michael Walsh. Yeah, we auditioned a number of bass players, and Michael had just come into town not long before, but he had a good voice. He was a good bass player, and he fit well with the band. Yeah, I mean, Richard left the band. It's like the original members who came with the second band left the new band, and probably a lot of it had to do with the music we were doing too. I mean, we were getting away from the folk rock, the acid rock, whatever. We were moving in a different direction.
How'd you feel about the whole experience of the label problems?
Because we had a business manager and a personal manager, so I was kind of removed from the day to day. But I think ABC. I mean, they spent some money on ads. There were ads in Rolling Stone. We had articles written about us by.
Did you get to save any of those?
Yeah, I have a scrapbook.
Wow,
yeah.
That's great.
Nat Hentoff did an article on us. We had a number of articles, and things were looking good. That's why it was very, very frustrating when the album, through our own fault really didn't do well. Yeah, but as I said, we were pick of the week in Detroit and Los Angeles and some other city, and
there were a lot of positive reviews written about the album.
There has, I think somebody mentioned, and this is on our website, that said that more has been written about the band since we broke up than when the band was actually together.
Wow.
A lot of stuff in England. I guess we were on the cover of one of the British fan magazines. I wasn't able to get a copy of that, but probably back in 2009 when the record from the Sunbeam record re-release came out.
How did the Sunbeam Records re-release of the LP on CD come about?
They had been in contact with Richard, who did the website, and there was talk back and forth for a couple of years, and then Richard passed away, and the whole thing got dropped, and then somehow they got a hold of Ken Frankel, who was the lead guitarist, and he kind of picked the ball up and started working with them. They were very much interested in some of the unreleased material that they could put on a second CD. And so Ken spent a lot of time getting this stuff together and having it remastered and whatever we could. Tried to find the original tapes of things, and sometimes it was successful, sometimes it was not. But the sound quality actually was pretty good. So we had the Hanley recordings, which was our very first recordings. We had the stuff from Capitol, which are some of my favorite recordings. And then some stuff we did in a home studio, the ABC album, of course. The only thing that's not on that album are some recordings that the new band did at Intermedia Studios, which are kind of interesting too.
Are there other recordings that exist?
There are some intermediate recordings, and we also have. I just received a flash drive with 105 live recordings on it that Kenny asked me to go through, and I am, but it's taking a little while because I don't know if it's Sunbeam or somebody else is interested in doing another CD of the live stuff and anything else that we might have. But that re-release came out in 2009. It got a nice review in the Boston Globe, and I don't even know how many they pressed or how it sold, but the value has held itself on Amazon, and they also did a double vinyl album, which I believe sold out, and then they repressed, and now it's unavailable. So, and we did get some good reviews from that. So it's interesting that music lives on.
Here's Walking in the Water. That was Walking in the Water on the Basement Recordings, recorded in Wellesley, Mass. in 1968. Does the band get royalty payments from any of the reissues?
I don't think you can really expect to get anything from small releases like that. It's mostly done by these labels that, they like they want to preserve the music.
Right.
I'm sure they cover their costs and then some. We're not getting royalty
from
checks.
The ABC album or
No, we actually got royalty checks from the ABC album for quite a while. And years after the band broke up, I'd get they'd get smaller and smaller and smaller. But they'd be there, and then they just
14 cents.
yeah. When it became less than the postage stamp, then they stopped sending them. Yeah, probably through. I was going to say through. Yeah, 73.
What caused the second version of the band to break up?
I think we were really we were doing the same things. We were doing the ski clubs, the concert clubs, what few teen clubs there were still in existence in New England. We were still playing them, and people just got tired of it. We wanted to, I'd spent years and years, playing every weekend, and personally, I think I was looking for a little bit different life. And nobody wants to think that they're going to end up, at the age of 50 playing, at the Club Zircon,
Right.
and in a smoky bar. And so when it became clear that we weren't going to really move beyond that stage, or we were never going to get back to, the heyday of the '60s, everybody kind of decided we were going to.
Did the musicians stay involved in music, or what did they do after you guys broke up?
A lot of them did. Michael went on to play. He played with, he played with a number of people. I can't think who he played with, but I know he played with Jonathan Edwards, and he played with some other major artists. Carey, I think, he played for a while and then got into the computer business. Connie formed a band called Diamond Lil. They were a small band. They played her show tunes that she always liked. And Walter always wanted to play. So he was probably the one that would have just played forever, and with the Ill Wind. But he played with some different bands, and then I ended up getting into another field. And
Are you still playing drums?
I tried to leave music, and I got involved in some other ventures, and then I got a call from John Lincoln Wright one day. I don't know how he tracked me down, but he did. Well, we knew each other. He used to be the lead singer in the Beacon Street Union, and he wanted to know if I wanted. He said the drummer was leaving. Wanted to know if I wanted to play in their band, and I said, gee, I don't know. I never played country music, but I said, let me call you back. So I thought about it overnight, and I called him back. I said, sure, I'll do it. It sounded like more fun than what I was doing at the time. And it was fun. It was very, very fun. And I played with them 74 through part of 75. And it was a big band. There were a lot of people in that band. And so subsequently there wasn't a lot of money. But we played a lot. And I think we had to play a lot to sustain everybody. And there was that was a very good band. I mean, there were great musicians in that band, and it was interesting to play. We played colleges and clubs and roadhouses and places I'd never been, and people loved the band. They had a real good following. You know.
Was that the last band you were in?
After I left, some of the musicians started leaving the Sour Mash Boys because they were offered gigs that paid more money. And finally, I decided I would leave too and continue in some of the other things I was interested in.
When did John Lincoln Wright start his band?
They started in the early 70s, probably 70, I want to say 72, and I joined them in 74. Yeah, it was shortly after. I don't know how many months, it wasn't a whole year, but it was a few months went by between the time Ill Wind ended and time for me to go to California and come back. But yeah, it was 74 when I joined that band. And I played with them, and then I left after some of the musicians I started with in that band left.
Yeah.
And then I played for a little while, not very long, with Chuck McDermott and Wheatstraw. And it was always understood that I would fill in until they found a permanent drummer. But that was fun too. It was country, but it was different. I always enjoyed Chuck's sense of humor in his songs.
What did you do next?
I got involved in the. I took one of my interests, which was bicycling, and got involved in the bicycle business. And I was going to buy out a bicycle shop, and then my accountant said that wasn't a good idea. So I ended up managing the bicycle shop, and then went over and worked for a major sporting goods chain, running their bicycle program for them. And then I moved to Maine. I had a chance to run a store for a company up here in Maine. So I came up to Auburn, Maine, and then looked around for something I wanted to do. And then I started my own company. I did some importing and distributing of bicycle parts and accessories to bike shops. And I did that for 17 years, and I sold it. But I haven't really done much drumming. I did some studio work for a local band up here, a folk band, and
How long was that?
that was back in probably the early '80s or something. But and then I've been kind of fooling around with a couple of local blues bands, but I really haven't done much drumming. Yeah, I have a summer camp, and I keep one out there, and I have my regular house. I keep one there, and sometimes I'll go down and play. But I haven't played with any band for a while. When you leave it for a while, like any musical instrument, it takes a while to feel like you actually can play again. So and I never really spend as much time as I should to really get out there and so I can play. But it's fun, and I keep in touch with people from the old days, and there, where I live now is in the Mount Washington Valley, and a lot of people have moved to the valley who had other lives, and some of them were musicians. So it's fun to be friends with them.
Do you guys still get together and jam?
Yeah, or more likely we're more apt to go mountain biking together.
A little more exercise.
Yeah. The mountain biking ex-musicians.
That keeps you in shape anyway.
Yeah, it's an outdoor enthusiast playground, so it's a good place. A good place for me.
Did you know Willie Alexander and the Lost?
We knew them. We didn't know them real well. I'm trying to think if I knew anyone real well in the Lost. No, what we used to, because our managers were friends, and I forget who this happened to. Either our equipment got stolen or their equipment got stolen, but we lent we had a gig that night, and they either we lent them our equipment or they lent us their equipment, and we were both in the same club at the same night. But yeah, they were friends, and so we kind of knew them.
Did you know David Robinson of the Cars?
I didn't really know him, but I used to bump into him from time to time. I used to see him practice his drums in a friend of mine's basement, and
What town was that?
I was in Brookline.
In Brookline.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the time you ran into Chevy Chase of Chameleon Church?
Oh yeah. Years ago, yeah, when I had my importing company, and I was at a regional trade show in Vermont, and I think they were shooting the movie Vacation, And so I knew he was in town probably. So I was on my way to grab something to eat, and he was coming out of the bar, and it happens very, very quick. He passed me, and I knew he probably wouldn't, remember me. And but as he left, I said, "Didn't you used to play with Chameleon Church?" And he did at least a triple take, and but we just kept on going our way. But yeah, it was. I mean, they were great years. I think we made some good music. We made some good friends, and had some great experiences. So, okay, that's it. It's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Rat Tales, Boston Rock Stories. Rat Tales is produced and directed by Lenny Scolletta and Mike Hoban, with a huge thanks to Medford Community Media in beautiful downtown Medford, Massachusetts.